It has been 10 years since I've been at Metageek. I have come back. Last year, thank you. Last year, Metageek was acquired by a company called Avik, and they have been still helping us make the tools, make new tools, continue the project that Joel and Ryan announced last year. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on is, so this tool is called Tonic. What you need to remember is it stands, well, it doesn't stand for, Metageek likes to name their tools after alcohol beverages and whatever. But what you need to remember, 2 NICs. That is how many NICs you need to use this tool, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. It's not going to be a new revolutionary idea of any sort, but what is happening, what we're doing in the background is important for where Wi-Fi is going with lots of channels in terms of how we are capturing. So basically, we can look at an SSID and we start changing the behavior of the NICs. They're up in the top right of the screen right here. We will set one NIC to a channel, and then we will divide the rest to scan other things and be proactive about it. So that's what I'm going to talk about, because you guys are going to have a few questions, I know. But that's the gist of what I'm going to be showing a little bit. Okay, so clicker. All right, so lots of options for channels. 20 megahertz channels, a lot of you guys have, we've already talked about this a lot. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. If you notice, 20 megahertz wide channels in the 6 gigahertz, there's 59 coming, or here, I guess, yeah. We don't have 6 gigahertz spectrum, 6 gigahertz capture yet at Metageek. It's a bummer, but we're working on it, so that's cool. What I am going to be showing is kind of the theory of how we plan to support and help you guys do packet captures with all of this. Because I know that you guys have had to go into environments where you sit down and you try and capture a client device roaming, and it roams to some weird channel way out there, and you're like, dang it, I missed it. That's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit more. Okay, this spectrum graph that Keith has put together, the Wireless LAN Pros Unlicensed Spectrum Graph, amazing. It's helpful for when you want to know what channels, like how they all line up. We're going to focus in the 5 gigahertz now, just because this idea is, I don't want to say it's like a novel idea, but I want to say that it's going to be unique in the way that it's done, and it has applications to where most of your client devices are now. So the 5 gigahertz, we have the 25 channels. Not all of them can be used, but you most likely don't have a device that you can plug in 25 NICs to capture and make sure you know what every single device, where it goes and whatever it wants to do. Client endpoint devices can be totally crazy. So if you were to look at all of these channels that are listed here and pretend you are going to make a decision and choose one of those, that's a really hard thing to do. From our perspective of trying to capture what that client is doing. Sorry, I'm really nervous. I used to like talking in public, but this is like a lot. Okay, so all of us have been in this position where you send someone a message and you say, I need a PCAP from floor 2, room 2265, voice issue. And you know what the response is going to be? How do I do that again? All right, open the capture tool, set it to the same channels as the APs. What channel are the APs on? Okay, let me look for you. AP TC2262 is on channel 1 in the 2.4 gigahertz, channel 54, primary channel 52 of the 5 gigahertz, channel 7, primary channel 1 of the 6 gigahertz. I understood that perfectly. All right, let me make this easier for you. The client is on 54, primary channel 52 right now. Set it to channel 52, 40 megahertz. This is going to go well. I don't see it. Oh, yep, sorry, client roamed. Set it to 36 now. Okay, This is a scenario that I have experienced. I'm sure some of you guys, raise your hand if you guys have had similar kind of things like this with trying to capture things. Then they send a packet capture back. I have no idea if I did this right, .pcap. And then they outsource it to you, and you say, well, did the issue even occur while you were capturing? And they say, maybe. I think it roamed a couple of times, but there was a bunch of stuff that was flying by on my screen. And then you say, never mind, I'll go do it myself. Please and thank you. Okay, so what has been happening in the past from this, from this point to this point is you use some sort of method to find the nearest APs in the area that you're going. And sometimes that's going to be a Wi-Fi scanner or your network monitoring solution. You're trying to understand from the client perspective what it sees, and you're going to say, okay, I need to scan this channel, this channel, and this channel. If you're smart, you might change some of your APs to be on the same channels that you're capturing, so you can make sure that you get some of those pieces. Then you configure the capture solution. Now, if you have a paid tool like OmniPeak or some of those things, it makes it pretty easy if you've got a sidekick that can scan 2 channels. And then you have to capture and recreate the issue. Now that's sometimes hard. Sometimes your capture solution is going to be part of your infrastructure. Sometimes the capture solution is not mobile. And sometimes you say, it can only go here because all of my APs in this small area are in this range. So we have to recreate it here. And that can be a part of a problem too. And so then you capture it, and maybe you have like 9 or 10 captures, and you have this, you collect it all, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to my desk and review this because this is a lot. Okay, so the reason I say this isn't like an exactly new idea, because all of us have kind of wanted something like this or thought of something like this, but a tool that actually does the scanning that you're using helps you find the nearest APs, and then the channels are selected by the network that you're viewing. If you have a tool that is aware of what channels the network is actually using, then the tool is capable of saying, well, I'm just going to scan those. And then you need some sort of real-time display to help you understand if you caught something or not, okay? And then events, my preference is exported to Wireshark. That's something that everyone can have and everyone can agree on. So some of this stuff is done in Tonic. This, like what I'm talking about here, can be done with other kind of capture sources. You'll recognize, some of you have seen demos of this, but to improve scanning, we take NICs. I have 3 NICs in this. I call it a NIC kick. It's just a USB hub and a little capture thing that I can clip on here, because once I had a sidekick, I didn't want to look like a dork anymore. And so I put it down here, but you can attach it here. Anyway, if we spend 150 milliseconds on each channel, there's 25 channels in the 5 gigahertz. That's a significant amount of time that it takes to scan the whole 5 gigahertz. And so saying, hey, I know that these channels aren't going to use, you omit those. I'm not going to scan the 2.4 gigahertz. I'm going to use all 3 USB adapters to scan the 5 gigahertz. All of that helps us spend more time on the channels that you care about. And then having a tool that says, if there is no network detected, I'm going to, on a channel, I'm going to scan that channel less frequently. Still going to scan it because we work in a technology that enables mobility, and so a tool also should be mobile and should be adjusting to things as you move around. Okay. So how this works for troubleshooting a client device, the primary adapter, so we're going to have one adapter that gets set to the device's channel. And so if we scan across the entire 5 gigahertz band and we say, okay, this device has landed on 36, we're going to set a primary the primary NIC on that one, and then the secondary NIC that you have, it's going to be scanning and hunting for that, okay? I fundamentally disagree with kind of filtering traffic. I think part of what should be happening is we should be evaluating all of the traffic on the channel, because that is part of the message of what can go wrong. And so you need to capture the entire channel. And then that primary adapter, as it is listening to the frames going back and forth to the client device, it's actually going to be looking at the signal strength, and it's also going to be taking in 11K neighbor reports. And so when the access point says these are the neighbors, we're actually going to start scanning those APs more frequently to anticipate a client roam. And so instead of spending a whole bunch of time on the whole 5 gigahertz pan, we're saying these channels aren't being used, and these aren't in my 11K neighbor report, and so we can hopefully follow a client device as it goes around. So a question that I get, will Tonic be able to catch roam events? And the answer is, it's still a game of chance, but we can improve our odds. And some of the ways that we can improve our odds of that are reducing the channels and scanning 11K neighbors. Okay, so this is how this kind of works. We're dividing up, so this is like when you open up the tool and we're saying we're going to use all the USB NICs to scan the environment. We're going to say 2 of the NICs are going to be scanning the 5 gigahertz, and one of them is going to be scanning the 2.4 gigahertz. Now, when you look at the numbers bounce around, they're not going, in order, and they're not spending an equal amount of time. And that's because if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see that some of these things are, that there's a little indicator that goes across the bottom. This is something that Joel and Ryan came up with. It spends more time on channels where there are networks. So we scan the channels with networks on them more frequently, and if there's no network, we scan it less. All right, so the other thing is the tool is intuitive for a user. So as you're clicking around on a tool and you click on an SSID, or if you don't, that's what we are going to be capturing and saving in the PCAP itself. So if you just open up the tool and you see all the networks, we're going to scan all of the, this slide here is talking about an SSID, but if you open it up, we're going to scan all the channels. If you click on an SSID, we're going to have the primary NIC scan channels that the SSID uses, and the secondary scan all the channels that are not being used. So if a user says the issue is everywhere just on this SSID, that's kind of an indication that you should probably walk around and see if you can capture things on that SSID. That's all you have to do, just click on an SSID. And then we'll set the secondary channel to scan 5 gigahertz non-SSID. And then if you have 2.4 gigahertz channels enabled, we'll scan those. Okay. Next, so if an issue is primarily occurring in this area, that's a sign that it's going to be a channel or a BSSID. The user is going to click on the AP in the tool, and the tool is going to immediately capture the same channel. And that's what this looks like here. Oh, cool. One of the things that Metageek has done a pretty good job is looking at all the frames coming through and calculating levels of airtime consumption. And so you can see devices that talk a lot or maybe use lower data rates or other things, but you can see the signal strength and the client MCS. We have the retries, the airtime usage for that BSSID, and MCS for that, and then you can actually drill down to the client. As you drill down to a client here like this, we aggregate all of the events. If we see roams and authentications, we capture that and we display it, and all of these things can be exported into Wireshark like this. Or not, okay. All right, so what I'm trying to say is, like, as soon as you click on a BSSID or something like that in an area, you click on the BSSID and we're capturing it automatically. So the same thing is kind of true for a client device, but this is really where this idea, I think, could be very helpful for us as we have more channels. We're not going to have all these USB adapters that we can just Velcro all over our bodies. Like, we just can't do that. And so, I don't know. I'll be okay. Thanks. So look at Joel. He wants the demo to go well. He's the real MVP. I appreciate it, Joel. Thanks. So if a certain type of device has issues all over the floor, this is when this tool is going to set one primary adapter on the channel that we found the device on, and as it roams, the additional adapters in here that are scanning, they're gonna, as soon as they find it, it's gonna set the primary NIC to that channel to follow it, okay? So what that does is we're gonna catch the off-channel data frames and we're gonna adjust accordingly. And so we will also see it probe on other channels. So like that's something that, you may have seen it and it may have disappeared and you don't know what it was doing off channel because it was not on the channel that you were capturing. We're gonna see some of those things. We'll see the neighbor report that it requests and receives. We will see it roam. If we see the reassociation frames, we'll call it a roam. If we just see a data frame, and no authentication or management frames, we'll just say assumed roam. And then if we see the 11K, I already said that. Cool. I'm ahead of myself. Okay. Anyway, in my opinion, when you can get better PCAPs, that helps us all. Okay. There's some weird stuff out there. I was texting back and forth with an old peer, Curtis. I was using his tool and I was seeing these APs. This AP sent 5,000 deauthentications in the span of 5 minutes. And it just was odd, and it turns out there was a bug. There's some weird stuff that you can see that you may not have actually understood is happening in your network. You need the proof, the vendors need the proof, and being able to capture the event as it happened helps you get better support from the vendor and helps everyone else in the community. So getting a good capture of the weird stuff that you find helps us all, but more importantly, it helps you learn the protocol better and helps you become a better engineer. So that's my pitch. Not a pitch, whatever. Learn Wi-Fi. Yeah. So what I'm hoping is at some point, as these tools adapt to getting better captures. Now, I still advocate for, if you really need to see everything perfectly, throw in a bunch of adapters, capture it all. But this conversation can change to the point where you can say, will you get a capture of this MAC address? And then they send the name of that MAC address .pcap instead of, I don't know what I found, okay? So I saw a whole bunch of failed connections. This is also something that the tool is capable of doing. And so, Metageek, real quick, in the past 6 months, we've introduced tonic files that include Spectrum data in a file that has PCAP data as well. So now you can marry those two together. We have PCAP anonymization. So if you have a PCAP that you need to send to somewhere, we will anonymize the whole thing. It uses planets in the Star Trek universe to rename all of the SSIDs. That was my thing. I was pretty excited about it. We aggregate all of the authentication events, and it recognizes EAP as well. So we get the response, the request, and the failure, and we will display the deauthentication and disassociation reason codes. And there's a bunch of UI optimizations. So if you have tried the tool in the past, I invite you to give it another try because there's a whole bunch of new useful things here, especially when it comes to airtime or MCS or signal strength, whatever you would like to do. It's pretty helpful. A tech can easily go in here, look at the clients, sort by signal strength, and anything that's right next to them, they can probably click on and get a decent understanding of what that is. If you notice here, if there's events that we capture, that little guy, it's a roam event, and that all of these events, my pattern, oh, cool, thank you. Yeah.